The first thing to do is make sure you have some light so you can see what you're doing and, more importantly, where you're treading. If you don't have a wired-in light, then you can always use a temporary work lamp. Then you should clear the space. It's a good opportunity to be bold and throw away all the old junk you'd put to one side. Once it's clear, you'll need 2 crawling boards which span 4 joists and can take your weight. These will stop you slipping off the joists and falling through the ceiling of the room below. Start at the furthest point from the loft hatch and lay 100mm thick insulation between the joists. Gently push in at the edges to get a snug fit, but don't push down too much. Remember, you want as much air as possible to be trapped in the insulation. If you have any old insulation still in place, you can just lay the new insulation over the top. We're using Space Blanket, but any of the insulation rolls sold by Homebase can be used. Start at the eaves, making sure you leave a slight gap to allow air to circulate. About 25mm will do. Then roll out towards the centre. If you're having difficulty getting into these corners, you could always use a broom handle. When the roll runs out, just start a new one and butt the 2 ends together. When you need to cut the roll, mark the length, grip the roll between 2 boards and cut with a knife. Check for any heavy-duty electrical wiring, which should always be above the insulation to avoid the possibility of overheating. Lower amp lighting cable should be okay to leave. Check for any downlighters or hot flues and make sure that the insulation is kept clear by at least 75mm to avoid the risk of a fire. Once you've filled between the joists, you now need to lay another layer across the joists to minimise heat loss. Remember, we're looking for a combined thickness of more than 270mm. So for the top layer, we're using 200mm thick Space Blanket. This will give an overall thickness of 300mm to maximise savings on our fuel bills. The process is exactly the same for laying either Space Combi or Carbon Zero insulation.